All right, guys. So I'm going to give you guys some help on the practice problems from our tangent practice Desmos assignment. This will be your answer check and kind of a whole bunch of example problems of doing tangent if you need them. Okay, so the basic idea is some of these ask you for a missing angle. If you need a missing angle, just remember that the angles in a triangle add up to 180 degrees. So you can do 180 minus 70 and minus 90 in this problem. That leaves you with 20. So our missing angle here is 20 degrees. That's the quicker and easier part. Now let's get to the solving for the missing side. So when you're doing a tangent problem, remember that you're telling your calculator, you type in an angle. So like we could use the 70, for example. And you type that in. And your calculator is now going to tell you what the slope of a 70-degree triangle is, what its rise over run is, if it was oriented as a normal slope triangle, if it was like this. Right? So it's going to tell you what that comes out as a decimal. So we're going to go tangent, and we're going to type in 70. And that comes out as about 2.75. Let's just round it to 2.75. Okay? So our calculator is saying that that's the slope. If you want it to look more like a normal slope, you could put a 1 on the bottom to make it look like a rise over run, because dividing by 1 doesn't do anything, so that didn't change the value. Now we need to set up an equation, two equal fractions, two equal slopes. These are similar triangles because they have the same angles. That's how we're doing this, is using the idea of similar triangles having the same ratios. So in our triangle, we need to make sure we write down the slope fraction in the order that our calculator is thinking of it. This is like our calculator's thought bubble here. So our calculator knows that whatever angle you type in is created by two lines, and the other one, the one opposite from it, is the one it thinks of as the rise. The opposite side from the angle is always the rise. So our triangle's all turned around. We need to use that idea. So we find the two sides that create that angle, and the one opposite from it, that's your rise, that's your opposite side, and that needs to go on top. Then your calculator's thinking that these two sides create the 90-degree angle. One of them's the rise, the other one's the run. So these two sides create the 90-degree angle. One of them's the rise, one of them's the run. We already figured out which one the rise is, so our run has to be the m here. So we're going to put that on the bottom. Now, a common mistake is people will think, oh, so I always put the variable on the bottom. No. You put whichever one's the rise on top and whichever one's the run on the bottom. Sometimes it's the variable, sometimes it's not. Depends on how the problem is set up. All right, from here, we just need to solve this equation, and a way to do that is cross multiply. That's where you multiply the top of one times the bottom of the other. So that would be 2.75 m equals, and then you would multiply the other diagonal. So that would be 1 times 3.2, so that would be 3.2. Then you could divide to get m by itself, right? To solve this problem, m is not by itself, it's linked with multiplication, so we will use division. So dividing by 2.75, and we get m equals whatever 3.2 divided by 2.75 is. That's about 1.16. Now I will show you guys that you could get a slightly better answer, slightly more accurate answer, if you used more decimals than just the 2.75. Remember, that was actually this big thing here. So a different way you could do this is you could do 3.2 divided by, and then you could type in the entire thing, tan 70. If you type in tan 70, it's going to give you the entire big decimal thing here. But that still rounds off to about 1.16, although technically that would round up, the 7 would round that to a 5, that would round that to a 7. So technically a slightly more accurate answer would be 1.17. But I'm not going to be real picky here about that. All right, let's move on to the next one. So always make sure you try these on your own. So if you found out you made a mistake, you think you understand this better, try out your other problems again, see if you need to fix them. But again, this is a video, you can pause it, you can rewatch it, do whatever you need to do. All right, let's do this one a little bit quicker. So the basic idea is finding our missing angle should be pretty quick. We know the angles add up to 180, subtract the angles we know. So subtracting the 90 and the 33 leaves us with a 57. Okay, now let's do the actual finding the missing side part. So remember, we're going to do tangent of one of our angles. I'm going to use the 33 since that's the one we started with. Now, remember, I can type that in my calculator, so tan 33, and it gives us a number. It's about 0.65 is about what that would round up to. So 0.65 And if I want it to look like a slope, I could put a 1 on the bottom if I want, because remember, that's what this is. This is slope. Now, how are we going to figure out our slope fraction? Remember, our calculator thinks about the opposite side from our angle being the rise. So we find the two sides that create the angle we typed in, and then the other one, the opposite side, is the rise. So that will go on top. Notice that in this one, the variable goes on top. In the last one we just did, the variable was on the bottom, right? So it's not always variable on top. It's not always variable on the bottom. It really depends on the problem. Okay, so the other side that makes the 90 has to be our run. So in this case, that's going to be the 210. All right, that's the setup. If you haven't yet, you should now have this set up and then cross multiply this and try that on your own. You could pause the video. All right, you've had a chance to try that on your own. Let's check. 1 times y is y, and that is equal to 210 times 0.65. So 210 times 0.65 we'll do on our calculator. 210, oops, clear this. 210 times 0.65 comes out as about 136.5. And that is our final answer for that problem. All right, let's take a look at the next one. Okay, finding the missing angle. This should be getting quick now. 180 minus the two angles that we know. Oops, I just typed in 80. 180 minus the 90 and minus the 45 leaves us with 45. So these are actually both 45-degree angles. All right, so what do we do with that now? Well, we pick one of our angles, maybe this one, and we do tangent. So we're going to go tan 45. And that should be a 4, not a 9. I realized that looked kind of like a 9. So tan 45. We're going to type that in our calculator. Tan 45. And hey, it comes out as 1. And you might be like, is that right? Well, it should make sense. A 45-degree angle would be half of a square. So if this was a square, it would be going up the same amount it's going over, and your slope would be 1. Which would imply that our answer is probably going to be 12.25. If you didn't follow what I'm saying, don't worry about it. We can still just do what we're normally doing, and it should come out fine. In other words, if we want this to look like a slope, 1 is the same thing as 1 over 1. What's the slope in our triangle? If we follow the same procedure, we look at the two sides that create the angle we typed in. The one opposite from it is going to go on top. That's going to be our rise. The other one that makes the 90 with it is going to be the bottom, so 12.25. Now we just cross multiply, so 1 times x is x, and 1 times 12.25 is 12.25. So notice that the two sides are actually equal, which is why the slope was 1 over 1. This is half of a square. The rise and the run would be equal. All right, let's take a look at the next one. This one doesn't ask us to find the missing angles. We're just going to hop right into tangent. So we're going to go tangent. We're going to write down the angle that we actually know. We're going to look it up on our calculator. So we're going to go tan 15. That gets us about 0.27, 0.267. We could round it off to here. It really depends on where you want to round it off. I'm going to go 0.268. But again, you might round a different amount. I wasn't real picky about it. You can put a 1 on the bottom to make it look like a slope, and then it equals the slope in our triangle. Thinking about it the way our calculator does, here's the two sides that make the angle. So this one is the opposite side. The opposite side goes on top, which means that the other one that forms a 90 with that must be our run, and that must go on the bottom. Now we just cross multiply. 1 times w is w, and that would be equal to the other diagonal multiplied together, which would be 0.268 times 47. Now, I'm actually going to use all of this to get a slightly more accurate answer than just typing in 0.268. I'm going to do tangent 15, and I'm going to do times 47. So that gets me about 12.59, blah, blah, blah. So I'm just going to call it 12.59. But again, that is a bit of a rounded answer. All right, guys, almost done. Last one here. So we've got, again, we don't need to find the missing angle. So we're just going to do tangent. We're going to put in the angle that we know. In this case, that's 28. We're going to go tan 28 to get that value. It's about 0.53, right? So we have about 0.53 over 1 is equal to, and now we need to think about it the way our calculator was thinking about it. Here's the angle we typed in. These are the two sides that create it. this side must be the opposite side. So that is z, and then our run would have to be this one, because these are the two that make a 90 together, right? The rise and the run. There we go. From here, we just have to cross multiply. So we'll do 1 times z is z, and that is equal to 14 times 0.53. So we'll do 14 times 0.53 is about 7.42. Now again, if I wanted to be more accurate, I could actually do the tan 28 thing times the 14 and get a slightly more accurate answer. It would be closer to 7.44 if you really use all of the decimals. So that would be about 7.44. All right, guys, the last slide is just letting me know how you felt about how confident you were in your answers today. And now that you've checked your answers, you should know how you did. All right, as usual, let me know if you have any questions on all of this, and hopefully these notes were useful for you.